Hello, Leo Sayer. Nice to meet you finally in person.
I know, Paul. We've been talking before, but across the oceans, but never had his chance.
I know, and you're on tour now with the new record. So how's the tour been going? Because I know it's just kicked off in the UK.
Yeah, we just did the first 2 gigs. We started off in Swindon. That would be last Thursday. Can't think of even the date. It was the 3rd or something like that. And then the 4th, I think, was in London. And somebody's actually providing an itinerary, as you can see there. So, yeah, it's been great. I mean, we had a quick rehearsal when we got here. Of course, I live in Australia, so I have to kind of come over here and do a mental change from my Australian band, who are fantastic as well, to my English band.
I was going to ask you work with
musicians, and it's kind of challenging, but really great. And I can only tell you the way the show works, we haven't changed a single song except for slotting in the new ones here. So basically the actors stayed the same from Australia to here. So which kind of shows the way it works. And if you can get the right order of things, then you kind of hold on to that, you know.
And what about the crowd? Because I was at the Union Chapel gig and I noticed it was quite a kind of rowdy crowd.
I know, they were very boisterous for London.
Is that an English thing, or have your audience changed a bit over the years? I mean, is everyone like that?
If you were surprised, I was gobsmacked. I mean, I expect London to be sitting on your hands, you know, can impress me. I hope he's good. Well, I've paid my money. I wanted my money's worth. You know, I thought they would all be like that, but no, they were feral. I mean, as we say in Australia, they were animals. But enthusiasm's good. When they sing along, it's lovely. I wish they sing in tune, but there's nothing you can do about that. But then you should come to Glasgow, to the Pavilion in Glasgow when we play there. And honestly, you can't, it's like Beatlemania. We can't hear ourselves. We always turn the monitors up even. I have my in-ear even louder because honestly, they put you off. They're too good. They're just amazing. They sing in tune as well.
And of course, you're promoting the new album, Selfie.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that record, because I noticed on the sleeve you make a big point of saying how, you know, you're pleased to have done this record by yourself. And why did you decide to change the approach and do something different?
I think it was probably a factor of getting older, and you think to yourself, you know, what is art? You know, if you call yourself an artist, and I tend to do that more than a pop singer, I think creatively, and I think kind of that I'd like to think that one day, not taking myself too seriously, but I'd like to think that one day, you know, my records will be recognised as very artistic, you know. So I think if I'm going to do that, then I should be like the great artists, kind of doing it by myself. And it's a huge challenge to do, but over the years I've been kind of getting closer and closer to mastering computers. It started off, I think, when I was in Vegas and I got a couple of synthesizers and taught myself to play little things. And I never was a keyboard player. I never was a guitar. I never learned to play guitar. I'm not a musician. But I learned how to manipulate things, and I learned that I could play dun, 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 very slowly and then get to the computer and then straighten it out and make the notes work right or correct one or two of them. So once you've got that, the ability to edit, you can do anything. And I felt that it was kind of important to make a record by myself. I thought of Stevie Wonder, who's a master musician, and Prince, who do that kind of thing. Todd Rundgren, maybe with a cappella, the album that he did, which is all his voice. And, you know, making the drums go, you know, all of that stuff. But I thought that I could do it because I've been doing demos of my last few albums. I mean, Voice in My Head, I did a lot of programming of sounds and strings and bits in there that was a guide for the musicians. And then came Restless Years, and I gave the guys a complete template. The demos sound actually very, very close to the finished thing. The only thing is they've got great musicianship on it, which I couldn't have added in. But I think this time I had a bit more confidence in what I'd created, so in the demos, you know, so I decided just not to pick up the phone. And I carried on, you know.
How long did it take then?
2 years.
Okay.
On and off, because basically, you know, in that you've got times when you're going off on tour and everything, but I keep coming back to it. And there'd be long blank days sometimes when I'd just be searching for samples. Was
the whole process harder or easier than you expected?
Good question. I think it was harder and easier, both, you know. Elements were easier than I thought. Elements where I really trusted my ear. And I think, you know, every musician in life has an ear. if you believe in your pitch and your ability to hear things and position them. It's a little bit like when I was an artist or a photographer. I had a great sense of perspective, distance and focus. So basically if you're born with that, then you can find spatial elements in music the same. So you know how to layer things, and you know the frequencies that won't break into other frequencies and all. So that stuff where I went with my gut was great. I think the harder part was trusting myself, which is always the problem, because you're thinking, could somebody play this better, all the time. And that's that voice is always in your head kind of, you think you can do this, don't you? So you have to kind of like fight that down and say, no, I can do this.
And the album has given you new material on your tour. How important is it for you to have some new songs to play rather than always just, playing the hits?
Terribly, because I think I've always had a world that's been, my life has been, probably from having a pop manager, I've always been a pop star. But underneath that, I was a blues singer and a blues harmonica player and a rock singer, and a very serious artist. I mean, I listen to more Talk and Sibelius than pop stuff. That's where my ear, or Keith Jarrett. I take music very seriously. So I'm dying for the time when I will get taken seriously. Probably, it's the finishing touch for me. So it is very important to release new stuff, to be developing and to be showing that development, and not just having people talk about your hair and sort of like just those early hits. A lot of them as well being British hits. They were very much based around the novelty of the time, so you'd write a song called Moonlighting about that story because it was a novel thing to sing about the M6 motorway. So there were always novelty, the Show Must Go On, the Pierrot, they're all kind of tricks that you learn that will give you a hit at the time. So I'd love to make more lasting music. I mean, I know I've got a great record in me one of these days. I'm not happy with any of them so far. And I'll keep going until I can get my Sgt. Pepper expression, as it were. So that's my driving force. So it's important, to have new stuff and new stuff to develop and express.
And where does the energy come from? Because, you're 70 now and you're still pushing forward, new record, new tour. I mean, where does that energy come from?
I guess the feeling that there's unfinished business and that I can still prove. I'm still trying to prove myself. I'm still at the first audition, and I'm still kind of trying to show what I can do. I'm a driven person, incredibly ambitious, terribly unsatisfied. I mean, the other night at the gig, I wasn't really happy with anything. Because it could be so much better all the time. So I suffer from that. It's a gene that I've got. But I see it in a lot of other artists. I see it in Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is always pushing for what else he can do, even if he's getting older and, it's more difficult to sing and all of those things. He's still going to want to prove to you that he can do something else.
And the nice thing is you've got the Reissue program, this ongoing Reissue program with Demon, where the latest box is the Hollywood Years vinyl box set. How much have you enjoyed that kind of process?
The most fantastic thing about that is that we get a chance to remaster and, to take things that you would have taken as the given for the best sound of those records. And then you can kind of think on top of that we could just get it a little bit better and a little bit edgier and get the sound really good. And luckily with the guys at Alchemy, they're just doing a marvellous job with it. It's a joy to, pick up the vinyl and play them, it's like really nice. It made me go out and buy a new player myself, so, so that I could really hear it. And I've been kind of playing them at home and just, really enjoying it. So, sometimes records do get a chance to reveal more if you kind of like, if you produce them correctly, master them properly and just give them a second chance.
Is there much in the way of outtakes and alternates from those sort of glory years, if you like, of the mid?
Well, yeah, I mean, we did that with Just a Box, and hopefully, I mean, we'll get Just a Box rejigged again, and maybe we'll have a Just a Box vinyl. It'll probably be the heaviest record known to mankind. But that featured so many outtakes, and I'd collected stuff. I'd been collecting, all stuff from. There's even more There's actually some stuff that we wanted to put on that we couldn't get permission for because nobody can actually clear it. Stuff I did with Alan Parsons and, you know, and stuff that we did for this All This and World War II album, which nobody knows who owns. Right. So, you know, there's an incredible version of The Long and Winding Road, which I did with an orchestra, which I hope one day somebody hears, you know.
For you, what challenges remain, Lee? I mean, you've got the new album out, you've got the tour. I mean, anything that, you know, any other ambitions to do things?
Oh, a million of them. There's about 480 songs in the catalogue, and I aim to get the lot out by the time I've finished. So, yeah. And there's so many. I mean, there were years in England that were very frustrating when I couldn't get record deals and couldn't get people. I wanted to do stuff that was new, you know, but they all say, oh, no, you've had your time in the 70s, you know, come on. You know, you should be very grateful for what you got. Why are you doing new stuff? But going to Australia was great because, you know, in Australia that gave me the license then to kind of make new records because there were people saying, yeah, bring it on, great, I've got a recording studio, come here. And that happened with Voice in My Head in Denmark, where I had a great friend there, an ex-girlfriend, who was making a record, and I went over there and then met the studio boss, Henning Tobiasen, marvellous man. It's this old milking station in the middle of the big island, Jutland, and he just turned around and said, look, the studio's yours, you know, come over here. Said, how many days? First I thought I needed 60 days, but I actually needed 160. And he just gave them to me. And he paid for me to go off and go to Prague and record an orchestra there. You know, so you have people who will give you a lifeline and you take it. But there were a lot of times, yeah, it was frustrating.
Do you think going to Australia and now kind of coming back to the UK to visit and promote records, do you think that's kind of space away has given people a chance to sort of reappraise you a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, for me personally, working in exile is really good. I mean, it was good enough for Hemingway and good enough for Jean Le Carré when he wrote about the Secret Service in Britain and wasn't even there. So I always think that artists work really well in exile, and it certainly also was the core to a lot of what I achieved, you know, in Los Angeles with Richard Perry and Arif Mardin and, you know, during that time, and David Courtney over there as well with Here. So, you know, we made some great records for being away from England. And funnily enough, if you listen to those records, there's lots of echoes of talking about England. And Selfie is basically, you know, it's a love poem to England. That's what that song is. So the theme, if you like, of Selfie is an artist in exile.
You mentioned David Courtney. I mean,
yes.
Do you ever... Are you in touch with him? Do you ever,
yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever think about rekindling that songwriting relationship, because obviously it was so fruitful in that period?
Well, you could do. You know, to be honest, I mean, David sent me some stuff, but I don't know if it's the same magic. Because something weird with David, where we were going towards the third album, Another Year, and David wanted to do his own stuff, which then went in a very different direction. And it was very hard for me. We did write again many times later. You know, we wrote World Radio, the theme track of that, and some of the songs on Here, of course. You know, we were working together, but it was different. And I don't know if those days could be rekindled in a way. Different, say, with Albert Hammond, where, you know, you'll find 3 songs on the new album with Albert Hammond, and there's about 4 on Restless Years, including the title track, and then on Voice in My Head in 2000, there's you know, quite a few of that. Quite a lot of the album is with Albert. We got together about, God, it's nearly 18 years ago, I think. We decided to write for a year, so we've stocked up all these songs. There's still more to come out, you know. So we've stockpiled this stuff, and that's different because I think there's something timeless. But I mean, Albert's been a little bit more of a professional writer in that way, you know. But there are other people I work with. I'd love to write again with Tom Snow, who wrote Thunder in My Heart and Stormy Weather and a lot of those great songs with, you know, as well. And we talk about it all the time. But honestly, I'm in a frame at the minute where I'm so happy working with myself.
You must have trusted, you know, friends and family that you would bounce your, you know, play
Nobody. I played this to nobody. Nobody heard Selfie until it was finished, except John Hudson, my cohort, great engineer, of course, head of Mayfair Studios, and did all the Tina Turner, and, you know, got Grammys and Oscars. And I go back to the time of Orchard Road and more than I can say. So yeah, only John. I just bounce off John. Nobody else. I was scared to play it to anybody else. If they turned around and hated it, I would have dropped the project probably.
And what about the changes in the industry? Because you've been there to witness it all. I mean, the sort of pressure of being a big, big #1 artist in the mid-70s in America, and
yes,
and the way that the industry has changed with people, licensing their records to smaller labels or putting them out by themselves. You've now got a good relationship with Demon. I mean,
I've tried to shift with it.
Yeah.
And I think that most intelligent artists would have been able to do that. I mean, even people like Jules Holland, who seems stuck in the past in some ways, is very modern in that way. Look at Elton, who collaborates with Eminem and everybody, and hats off to him. I probably wouldn't do the same thing, but I really admire his bending attitude towards that, that he wants to be contemporary and he wants to be respected, so he'll work with Ed Sheeran or anybody in that frame.
I mean, it can seem a bit desperate when people do that sometimes.
Well, it can. I mean, the big factor at the end of it is the music good? And if the music is good, then great. If it's not great, I mean, we've heard Paul McCartney collaborate with some people and we haven't been happy with it. But then we've heard him, but if that inspires him to go on and make a record like the last record he's made, then fantastic, good for him.
Well, you mentioned Elton, and of course we've had the Queen biopic and all the rest of it. What about Leo Sayer, the musical?
Well, I tried to push that idea a few years ago. I actually have a script for The Show Must Go On. But I don't know.
You've got the back catalogue for it. You've got your kind of greatest hits.
Don't know. Just finding the time, I guess. But we do have a good script. There was a singer called Melanie who used to work with me, and her husband Forbes works in the Royal Shakespeare Company, and he's actually a good musicals writer in small, hip, fringe Edinburgh kind of musicals, and he came up with a fantastic idea. I'm not going to tell you now because I'd give it away, but somebody stole the idea and made a musical about Queen. So I've learned to shut my mouth after these days, because a lot of the theme of the Queen musical came from my script. So these things happen. I'm not angry because I love it for the boys to have got that, but the whole setting came from what I designed, in The Show Must Go On. But the other thing is, I'm writing a book at the minute, and my life and my adventures are so fascinating. And
this is you're writing an autobiography?
Yeah, and I've got to do it myself. And it's taken a time, but I'm getting there. I'm about 1983 at the moment.
It's always better to write autobiographies by yourself.
I think so, yeah. But the problem is I'm at 89,000 words, and I've hardly 3/4 through it. It might have to be 2 volumes. But somebody actually said to me recently, and he's a filmmaker in Australia, and he said, man, it's a movie. So I don't know, maybe there's a story in there, The interesting thing is not many people know about it. It hasn't all been revealed yet. My story hasn't been fully, told yet. And I think it's a good thing, because I'm still able to shop at Tesco's and Sainsbury's and get away with it, It's good.
Excellent. Well, Leo Sayer, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. Always a thrill. Nice one, man.